Hi, I'm Ali, and a warm welcome to the Ceramic Repair Studio. So in today's video, I thought I would fill in these little missing pieces here on this ginger jar, which actually has been converted into a lamp base. Now it's Chinese, and you can see because the colour of the base is quite a bluey grey. And the colour I'm going to use, because I'm going to use some Milliput today, is a silver grey. Now I do collect lots of different colour tones to remind me of the colours that Milliput do, and the silver grey is quite a good colour. You can get also the white. This is the super fine white, which is quite bright, but I thought with using this colour and adding a tiny bit of black, which I just had an experiment on, it kind of just knocks it back a bit. So today we're going to add the silver grey, and we're also going to add a little bit of black to it, which I haven't done before, but I thought could be quite interesting. So I'm going to use, as I say, Milliput. So we're going to use 50 of one of the packet and 50% of the other. So we mix them both together. Now, there are other products on the market, but to be honest, I tend to use Milliput because it's easy to sand, it dries fairly quickly. They say 24 hours, although I do tend to leave it another 48. So once you've got one of the Milliputs, I like to actually roll it into a ball because it's easier to tell if it's the same size as the second piece we're about to roll up. And they come in they're always in two different colours, which is quite useful because then you'll know when they're really blended in. So make sure that you actually close up afterwards, not to dry anything out. And then we'll just give that a roll. And then you can compare to see if they're roughly the same size, which they are. So first of all, I'm just going to blend this together. Actually, I'm going to take off a tiny bit of the other colour, actually, this colour tone, because we're going to add a bit of black. So we just mix that together. And because it's two different colours, you can tell that first of all it almost looks like a marble colour. And once it's fully, you'll know it's fully combined. One, because the colour's the same, and also two, because it almost feels like blue tack in the hands. It's quite kind of pliable and soft. So now I'm kind of mixing that up. I'm just going to add a tiny bit of this black, as I say, which I've just started experimenting with. So I'm going to, again, it comes in two and you mix them two together, but I'm just going to be quite cheeky and just add a bit of the black one. We only need a tiny, tiny bit, so it shouldn't make too much difference. So just adding a tiny bit because I have taken a bit from the other packet as well. And let's just mix that together. Just as I say, I just think it knocks back the colour better. But obviously it depends on what colour your item is. So we'll keep mixing. You want to make sure it's fully mixed. If the Milliput isn't mixed completely together, you will find that it won't actually set and it will end up being quite soft, and so you have to scrape bits off and start again. So you want to make sure it's completely and utterly mixed, which this now is. Now I am using a little implement here. If you can see it, it's quite flat on one side, and you can get things like dentist tools which are really useful, again because they're quite small and you can actually get into the small nooks and crannies and crevices. So with this tool I'm just going to take a piece and I'm going to start on this large part here. So we'll just blend it in slightly. Now when you're applying your Milliput, you do actually want it to be slightly proud and going a little bit over the original, so it's really easy to sand then. If you go over too much, you're just going to make too much hard work for yourself when it comes to sanding, but you can just make it slightly more proud. And by using an implement like this, you can really make sure it's getting right in. Now I always have a glass of water as well, so you can always dip it into the water, and what you'll find is it will actually smooth, as you can see, the Milliput out. And we'll just smooth it along. Take any excess off if you find you've applied too much. Maybe a tiny bit more there. And then we'll go on to the next section. I can see little bits there as well. So, and we'll just keep moving along. Okay, just really set in. If you don't have an implement like this, you could always use something, a very small palette knife, or even a cocktail stick maybe. Or, you know, worst scenario, just use your finger, dip in, you know, and just really get it into those crevices. This is actually another good technique. You may end up with bits going over, but you can always take that off with your finger. Now I'm looking here, I can see a couple of big pieces here. Now on some of these, which are really, really small cracks, I'm not actually going to put the Milliput in because the crack will affect anyway, but on the very large ones here we will. Now we're going to finish this as a museum repair, so once this is dried, which again will take around 24 hours, I will actually sand it, and I will probably put a bit of glaze on it so it will protect it from, you know, discolouring, say if you've got dust and things, but it will also show where the damage has been. Sometimes it's not, you know, it's quite nice to see it's part of its history. You know, it's been broken, unfortunately, this one in a house move, but you know, by showing it, it can actually be quite beautiful in its own way. Now, if you do china restoration and or repair, and you do manage to repair it 100%, and you know it's you've painted it and you've glazed it, and you can't see any breaks, just always remember if you do go to sell it, you always have to mention that it has been broken, because it may not be, you know, obvious to the naked eye. Now, if you do have any products which you use for moulding, which isn't actually Milliput, please leave a comment in the comment box, please. It's always nice to know what other people are using, you know, and how they get on with other types of filler. Okay, I can see a little bit here, and you just want to keep going along slowly and methodically. This is actually quite a good colour, and I think because we've added a tiny bit of black in there, I think it's really going to help with the blending in. Again, just a little bit of water because I like to smooth it. Now, once it's completely dry, if you find that you've missed a few patches, you just remake some and just go back. Now I can see another large piece here. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to sort of take off a piece, and actually when it gets this large, slot it in. If it's too large, you can always add a little bit of glue in first of all and then place your Milliput in, just to give it some extra. But I do find Milliput does tend to hold in place quite well. And then really press into, and again just make sure it's a little proud. If you need to add a little bit more, you can always add another little piece in there. Let's just do a little bit more there, I think. And just use the finger. As I say, you don't always need to use a tool. And I do find this is quite forgiving. So just, if you don't have a tool, just do that. But say, don't add it too much, otherwise you're going to give yourself more hard work. And again, I always like to finish off. You could always just say, dip your finger into some water and just place it down there. It's better. So when it comes to sort of lines like this, you can actually get your implement and you can sort of put it in, you know, and really try to get it into those crevices. Or another technique you can do is just take a tiny little piece and then just literally roll it like a sausage. And then you can just gently place it where you see your crack. Do another little piece there. Break a little bit off and just keep going through and just moulding. Now you could leave it like that, but obviously when it actually comes to sanding, you're going to end up with quite a lot of sand, and you don't want to keep over sanding because you don't want to scratch any of the original surface either. So what I would tend to do would be to take my implement and then just smooth it down and just take off any surplus. It's better, smooth it in. I do find it actually smoothing is a lot quicker, but I realise not everybody has one of these. Let's leave that there. So I can see we've got another large crack here. So again, we just take our piece and we just keep going through, just slowly, methodically again. Just place it in with the hands if you like, and just really squidge it in and down. Just move it across. And I can see a tiny bit more crack. It's really good to do this in the light as well. You do want a fairly good light so you can see where things need, where the Milliput needs applying. A bit there. Leave that one slightly proud. Now, Milliput does come in lots of different colours actually. You have the superfine white, which I find is, I've got to say, probably the easiest to sand. I mean, they're all easy to sand, all the colours, but the superfine white has just got a slightly different texture, which I love. But when it comes to Chinese items, you've always got that sort of bluey grey ground, and so using the silver grey is a great colour. Just keep doing that, just going along. Now I will probably leave this, as I say, for 48 hours. Now if you have a very large piece of Milliput which you've placed in, it will take longer obviously to dry, but if you've just got small sort of, for instance, small amounts, it's a lot quicker to dry, so it wouldn't take so long. I'm going to give this 48 hours and then it will be ready then for sanding. So a few little bits there. Again, you can always dip in with the fingers and just smooth down. Makes it easier when it comes to sanding. It was actually, because it's pottery, it was actually quite tricky to place in. So if you have missed my previous video, I would recommend watching that one. Unfortunately, I did miss out on the last few seconds, but you get the real idea. Now let's keep going around and looking. Bits here. Now to buy Milliputs, it's quite easy. It's freely available on Amazon. I do have a description in my link for, I think it's in England and America, but I think Canada as well and Australia. It's actually a British brand, made in Wales, I believe. But it's a very good product, useful for a lot of things. And it's quite inexpensive as well. So I'm just going to sort of, we've got a bit of a line here, so I'm just going to come up and go through again and just gently place, and then just take little bits If it's such a tight fit like this, actually it's quite easy. You don't need too much product. And what I'll do is I'll just keep going along, going through, working through it, making sure that I haven't missed any bits. I think what I actually may do, just to show you techniques of painting, I realise not everybody has a drawing. I am going to be an airbrush, sorry, but I may actually just paint in some of the dark pieces so I can show you how I do just hand painting, because a lot of people, are quite comfortable with doing hand painting. Again, I've got another bit. Looking in the light, you notice more shards, pieces missing. Let's go into the light there. You have quite a long time to use the Milliput, as I say, because it takes a little while to dry. So, you've got a good time to sit down and use it. So maybe have a cup of tea in between. And just work all the way along. And again, I would just take some of the Milliput off and use my knife just to smooth down my tool. I do find though, when you do add water to it, it sort of goes almost like plasticine and can be quite tricky, so you don't want to keep manipulating it. And I'll just keep going across and over. So you don't need to do this because, obviously you're going to be sanding. And then just keep checking. Right, quite happy with that. A tiny bit there. Now I'm going to leave this to dry, and in, as I say, 24 hours, 48 hours, the longer you leave it, the better. And in the next video, we're going to be sanding, and we're also going to be doing, I think, maybe a little bit of painting as well. So we'll see how I get on and what the client wants. So I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and please give us a thumbs up. It really does help with the algorithm. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Okay, bye.